All right, folks, ready to head north? We're talking Canada today.
The Great White North.
Exactly. And, before we start picturing, those stereotypical endless fields of maple syrup and Mounties on horseback,
Yeah.
let me tell you, things are getting interesting up there.
Interesting might be an understatement.
Yeah, for sure.
We're unpacking a recent interview between Dr. Jordan Peterson, that Canadian intellectual rock star,
Oh, yeah.
and Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of Canada's Conservative Party. And trust me,
Yeah,
it is a must-watch. We'll drop the link in the show notes.
absolutely.
Because what they reveal about the state of Canada is eye-opening, to say the least.
Seriously, if you haven't seen it yet,
Okay.
pause this deep dive right now. Go watch it.
Yeah.
Okay, back. Good. Because what we're seeing is this stark contrast between Canada's potential, right, all those resources and educated people,
Right.
and the reality of their current struggles.
And it's a struggle that's hitting close to home for a lot of Canadians. Did you know that residents of Ontario, Canada's wealthiest province, are now poorer per capita than those living in Mississippi?
Hold on. Mississippi. As in the poorest U.S. state. Ouch.
Okay.
That's got a sting, little a. I mean, Canada's supposed to be this beacon of prosperity, right?
Well, that's the narrative.
Yeah.
But the numbers tell a different story. One key indicator is business investment. American workers have roughly $28,000 invested in their productivity, while Canadians are stuck with a measly $15,000.
So basically, Canadian businesses aren't investing in their future.
Yeah.
No wonder Canadians have to work 60% harder just to keep up with their American counterparts.
Yeah.
It's like they're running an economic marathon with ankle weights on.
It's not a sustainable situation, and it's impacting everything from housing affordability to household debt. Speaking
Yeah.
of which, this Canadian household debt is actually higher than the country's entire GDP.
Whoa, that sounds eerily familiar. Isn't that what happened in the U.S. right before the 2008 housing crash? Not exactly a comforting thought.
And it's not just abstract numbers on a balance sheet. This debt burden is crushing real people. 2 million Canadians are relying on food banks, and 80% of young people can't even dream of owning a home.
That's a far cry from the world's most affluent middle class the New York Times was praising just a few years ago.
Right.
So what happened? Where did it all go wrong?
Well, according to Poilievre, one of the biggest culprits is inflation.
Okay.
She calls it an immoral tax because it disproportionately punishes those who are trying to be responsible, the ones who are saving for the future.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Break that down for me. How exactly does inflation punish the savers?
Think about it this way. You're diligently putting money aside each month trying to build a nest egg, right?
Right.
But inflation is like this silent thief constantly chipping away at the value of your savings.
So it's not just that prices are going up.
Mm-hmm.
It's that the value of your hard-earned money is shrinking. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
Exactly. And it's a double whammy because it also incentivizes risky behavior. Why bother saving when your money is going to be worth less tomorrow? It pushes people towards speculation and short-term gains instead of long-term planning.
So inflation is not just an economic problem. It's a societal problem.
Yeah.
It undermines trust in the system, discourages responsible behavior, and fuels inequality.
Precisely. And what's even more frustrating is that the people who are most affected by inflation, the working class and those on fixed incomes, have the least ability to protect themselves from it.
Right.
They're the ones getting squeezed the most.
So what's the solution?
Yeah.
Enter Pierre Poilievre stage right with a plan to turn things around.
His plan is all about empowering individuals, unleashing the power of free enterprise, and shrinking the size and scope of government.
Sounds like music to my ears.
Yeah.
But let's get specific. What are some of the key points of his plan?
Well, he wants to start by slashing government waste and bureaucracy. He's talking about cutting back on things like consultants' foreign aid and corporate welfare.
How much are they spending on consultant?
A whopping $21 billion annually.
Oh my God.
That's $1,400 per Canadian family just on consultants.
You've got to be kidding me. That's insane.
It's a lot of money.
No wonder Canadians are feeling the pinch.
Poilievre is basically saying, look, we've got all these bureaucrats. Why are we paying outsiders to do their jobs? It's about getting back to basics, focusing on core functions, and streamlining the system.
Okay, so cut the fat, get the government out of the way, and let the free market work its magic. I like where this is going. But Canada also has this incredible abundance of natural resources, right?
Absolutely. Poilievre sees Canada as a potential energy superpower. They've got vast reserves of oil, natural gas, uranium, lithium, you name it. but they're not fully utilizing their potential because of bureaucratic roadblocks and misguided policies.
So how does he plan to change that?
He wants to repeal the anti-energy law bill C-69 and incentivize municipalities to speed up building permits and reduce development charges. Basically, he's saying, let's get these resources flowing and turn Canada into an economic powerhouse.
Now that's a vision I can get behind.
Yeah.
But it's not just about digging stuff out of the ground and selling it off right.
Exactly. Poilievre's vision is much broader than that. He wants to create a value-added economy, one that attracts investment, fosters innovation, and creates high-paying jobs for Canadians.
Okay, so it's about moving up the value chain, becoming a global leader in technology, manufacturing, and entrepreneurship.
Precisely. He wants to see Canada become a hub for innovation, a place where the best and brightest from around the world come to build the future.
Now that's a future worth fighting for. But how does he plan to make this happen? What are some of the specific actions he's proposing?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. We'll dive into those day one changes and explore the nitty-gritty of Poilievre's plan in our next segment. Don't go anywhere.
All right, we're back and ready to unpack the nitty-gritty of Poilievre's plan.
Yeah.
We're talking about those day one changes, those bold moves that he's promising to make right out of the gate. It's like, hitting the ground running, or in Canada's case, maybe hitting the ice skating.
He's certainly not wasting any time. One of the first things he's vowed to do is axe the carbon tax. It's a symbolic move, but also a significant one.
Yeah, it sends a clear message that he's serious about, making Canada more competitive and energy independent.
Exactly. It's about putting Canadian families and businesses first, not punishing them with a tax that's driving up the cost of everything.
But the carbon tax is just one piece of the puzzle, right? What about the housing crisis? I mean, 80% of young people can't afford a home. That's a recipe for social unrest.
You're right. It's a huge issue, and Poilievre is tackling it from multiple angles. First, he wants to remove the federal goods and services tax, or GST, on new homes that are below a certain price point.
So make it cheaper to build homes, which in theory should make them more affordable for buyers. Makes sense to me.
And he's also planning to incentivize municipalities to speed up those notoriously slow building permit processes.
Oh, yeah.
The idea is to increase the supply of housing, which should help to moderate prices.
Right now, it's like trying to get a permit to build a spaceship. It takes forever and costs a fortune.
But it's not just about economics. Poilievre is also focused on tackling crime, which has been a growing concern in Canadian cities.
Yeah, it seems like crime rates have been ticking up, especially in places like Vancouver. What's his plan there?
He's particularly focused on cracking down on repeat offenders,
Okay.
the small percentage of criminals who are responsible for the vast majority of crimes.
I read somewhere that just 40 people in Vancouver were arrested a staggering 6,000 times in a single year. That's mind-boggling.
It's like a revolving door justice system, and it's not keeping communities safe. Poilievre wants to change that by making it much more difficult for repeat offenders to get back on streets.
It's about sending a message that crime has consequences and holding people accountable for their actions.
Exactly. But there's another issue that's closely tied to crime, and it's a sensitive one: immigration.
Yeah, that's a topic that can get pretty heated, and I know Poilievre has some strong opinions on it. What's his stance?
Well, first, he recognizes that the current system is overwhelmed. Canada's seen a massive influx of immigrants in recent years, and it's put a strain on housing, healthcare, and social services.
I remember reading that Canada's population grew by a whopping 1.2 million people in just 1 year.
Wow.
That's a lot of new people to integrate into society.
And it's not just about numbers. Poilievre is also concerned about the impact of immigration on Canadian identity and social cohesion.
Okay, this is where it gets a little tricky. What exactly does he mean by that?
Well, he's talking about moving away from the idea of a hyphenated society where people identify primarily with their ethnic or cultural background rather than as Canadians first.
So it's about emphasizing shared values and a common sense of national identity.
Exactly. Poilievre argues that a strong national identity is essential for social harmony and economic prosperity.
It's like the glue that holds everything together. Without it, things start to fall apart.
He believes that Canada needs to return to an immigration system that prioritizes integration and assimilation.
Okay, but how do you do that without being exclusionary or discriminatory? It's a delicate balance.
Poilievre's approach is about focusing on shared values and principles, things like freedom, individual responsibility, and equality of opportunity.
So it's not about excluding people based on their background, but rather about making sure that everyone who comes to Canada buys into the core values that make Canada Canada.
Exactly. He wants to create a society where everyone feels welcome, but also where everyone understands that being Canadian comes with certain responsibilities and expectations.
It's like joining a team.
Right.
You're welcome to join, but you need to be willing to play by the rules and contribute to the team's success.
And Poilievre is adamant that this isn't just about government policy, it's about a cultural shift.
Yeah.
It's about Canadians taking ownership of their national identity and actively promoting the values that make their country unique.
So it's not just about changing laws. It's about changing hearts and minds. It's about Canadians coming together and saying, this is what we stand for, and this is who we are.
Exactly. It's a bold vision, and it's one that's resonating with a lot of Canadians.
Well, I'm definitely intrigued. It's refreshing to hear a politician talking about these issues in such a frank and honest way.
And he's not just talking. He's proposing concrete actions to back up his words.
Okay, so we've covered the carbon tax, housing, crime, and immigration. Those are some pretty big issues right there.
Yeah.
What else is on Poilievre's day one agenda?
He's also planning to tackle some of the regulatory hurdles that are stifling innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay.
He wants to streamline the approval process for new businesses and make it easier for companies to invest and grow in Canada.
Because right now it's like trying to navigate a bureaucratic maze.
Right.
It's enough to make anyone give up and move their business elsewhere.
Exactly. Poilievre wants to change that by creating a more welcoming environment for businesses, one that's based on common sense and a belief in the power of free enterprise.
It's about unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit, letting people take risks, and rewarding innovation.
And he's also talking about investing in education and skills training, making sure that Canadians have the tools they need to succeed in the 21st century economy.
So it's not just about cutting taxes and regulations. It's about investing in people and creating an environment where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential.
Precisely. And that's what's so compelling about Poilievre's vision. It's not just about fixing the economy, it's about building a better society, one that's based on freedom, opportunity, and a shared sense of national purpose.
Okay, I'm sold. This guy sounds like the real deal. But let's be realistic. Can he actually deliver on all these promises? I mean, he's going to face a lot of resistance from the establishment. Right?
Absolutely. There are powerful forces that benefit from the status quo, and they're not going to give up their power easily.
So Poilievre's got a tough fight ahead of him. But hey, at least he's willing to take on the challenge. And that's something to be admired.
You're right. And what's even more encouraging is that he's inspiring a lot of Canadians, especially young people, who are hungry for change, and a leader who's willing to fight for their future.
It's a reminder that even in challenging times, hope is never lost, and that real change is possible when people come together and demand a better future.
And that brings us to our final thought for this deep dive.
Ooh, I love a good final thought. Lay it on me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. It's been a really interesting deep dive.
It has, and honestly, I'm feeling pretty inspired, We've gone from like the depths of economic despair in Canada to the heights of Poilievre's like ambitious vision, for their future. It's been quite a ride.
It has. We've explored the challenges and the opportunities and the potential pathways for Canada to not just recover, but to truly become a global leader.
Yeah, and I think what strikes me is that, Poilievre isn't just talking about like tweaking the system around the edges, right? He's talking about fundamental change, like a realignment of priorities.
You're absolutely right. He's challenging the very assumptions that have guided Canadian policy for decades.
Yeah, and let's be honest, some of those policies have clearly not been working. I mean, poorer than Mississippi. Come on, Canada. You're better than that.
Well, that's what Poilievre is arguing. He's saying that Canada has lost its way, that it's become complacent and bogged down in, bureaucracy and special interests.
It's like they've been stuck in this rut, and Poilievre's come along with this big old tow truck to pull them out.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
He's offering a new direction, a new way of thinking about Canada's role in the world.
And it's a direction that resonates with a lot of people, right? Especially those who feel like they've been left behind by the current system.
Absolutely. Poilievre's message of economic empowerment, individual freedom, and a strong national identity is appealing to a broad cross-section of Canadians.
Okay, so let's recap the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Okay.
First, the economic reality check. Canada's economy is not as rosy as some might think.
Right.
There are serious challenges, from like stagnant growth to crushing debt to a housing crisis that's pricing young people out of the market.
And these aren't just abstract economic indicators. You know, they're having a real impact on people's lives, their ability to provide for their families, their hopes for the future.
Absolutely. Then there's the inflation piece, which, as we discussed, is like this stealthy tax that's eroding the value of savings. and undermining long-term planning.
It's a hidden burden that disproportionately affects those who are trying to be responsible, the ones who are playing by the rules.
And let's not forget the bureaucratic bloat, right?
Yeah.
The insane spending on consultants, the regulatory hurdles that are stifling innovation and entrepreneurship. It's enough to make even the most optimistic Canadian want to throw in the towel.
But that's where Poilievre comes in with his message of hope and renewal. He's saying, look, we can do better. We can unleash Canada's potential. We can create a more prosperous and free future for all Canadians.
And he's got a plan to do it right.
He does.
Slash government waste, reduce taxes, unleash the power of free enterprise, get those resources flowing, and make Canada a global hub for innovation. It's a bold vision, no doubt.
It is. But it's a vision that's grounded in a deep understanding of economics, human nature, and the principles that have driven successful societies throughout history.
So the million-dollar question is, can he actually pull it off? Can he overcome the entrenched interests, the bureaucratic inertia, the political resistance?
Well, that remains to be seen. It won't be easy, but what's clear is that Poilievre is tapping into a deep well of frustration and a yearning for change. He's giving voice to those who feel like they've been ignored or marginalized by the political elite.
He's the underdog, the outsider, who's shaking things up and challenging the status quo. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed to bring about real change.
And that's our final thought for this deep dive.
Ooh, I love good final thought.
This exploration of Canada's economic and political landscape reveals a country at a crossroads. The choices they make in the coming years will have a profound impact on their future. Will they continue down the path of decline, or will they embrace a new direction, one that unleashes their potential and restores their place as a global leader? The answer ultimately lies with the Canadian people.
And as always, we want to hear from you. What stood out to you in this deep dive? What questions do you still have about Canada's future? Leave us a comment and let's keep the conversation going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with your friends. Until next time, stay curious.